Hey everybody, I am Tin Tim. That is T-I-N as in no place like home. T-I-M as in maybe if you tried harder. I am America's first drag queen public intellectual, aka the Cornell motherfucking West of drag, coming to you each week with my thoughts on the most recent episode of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 5. So before I say anything else about this week's episode, I just want to say, in case there is anyone from Drag Race Landia watching, that once again I thought this week was, in general, very successful, very compelling, very watchable television. One of the things that people have wanted to talk about the most in the wake of this episode is the Roxxxy Andrews issue and her tears on the runway over being abandoned at the bus stop as a child. Most people are asking, were they genuine? Was it fake? Was it kind of put on for the camera? I think in a way it almost doesn't matter whether the tears were real, quote unquote, or whether they were faked. I think that ultimately everything we see on reality television is some combination of, you know, kind of quote unquote real, like deeply, authentically felt, and something that's kind of put on for the cameras. They're put in this situation where, you know, nothing is natural and everything's kind of heightened, right? Emotionally, and it's like very tense and intense, and you know, then they're encouraged to, you know, make good television. Sharon Needles in some interview that I read referred to it as like method acting, right? So I think the question of like fake or, you know, not fake is like, yes, both. I think the bigger issue is that people would not be questioning Roxy if we had felt something, right? So what it says to me more so is that there was a large portion, obviously not everyone, but a large portion of the viewers and of the fan base who were not moved by that moment and who kind of like rolled their eyes or were kind of like, ugh, like our emotions are being manipulated again. And to me, that's more about like the story that the show is telling. If it fails to make you feel something, then you know that's a failure of storytelling. The issue to me this season is that like the kind of arc of the show has been very like spastic, and you know it's like one moment we're all being kind of like catty and fighting with each other and it's cliques and it's dramas and feuds, and then the next moment it's like we're the seven sisters, and that progression kind of isn't there, and it's sort of like where is this coming from? And that's where it, you know, it hit a false note emotionally, whether it was true or false. Usually when I talk about how the narrative is constructed on the show, I try not to say editing or to like reduce it down to editing, because I think that the production is much more complex than that, right? It's not just about the person in the editing room putting the pieces together. It's about the casting process. It's about bringing the girls together in the room. It's about the challenges. It's about the advice they give them, and the coaching. It's about the questions they ask them and the confessional. You know, the whole thing comes together to create that sort of constructed story. It's not just the editing, but the editing is a big part of it. And I think what's been interesting to me this season is viewers and fans are talking a lot about editing. I guess apparently the show got a new editor this year, and a lot of viewers haven't been like totally satisfied with the editing. But what's interesting to me is they're not just talking about editing in the ways that people usually talk about it, like what did they show, what did they not show, what got cut out. They're also talking about it at this very like kind of minute, what I would call like the formal level, more of like the technical aspect, you know, like frame by frame way of the editing. How are they putting the shots together? My friend Robert Yoshino, aka Katana Ray, Boy with Brushes on YouTube, did a video where he was talking about like one scene where a character had, you know, this much of their contour on, and then like in the next shot it was like half done. So the way that it's being kind of spliced and diced being a little bit too sloppy, a little bit too clumsy, a little too obvious, and then maybe also just a little too like rapid fire. So it's really interesting to see people talking about it at like that technical level and not just sort of the bigger aspects of the editing, like who's getting what kind of airtime and what is it showing about them. The other thing that sort of bugged me this week and that I wanted to talk about was the way the other girls were criticizing Jinkx Monsoon for being kind of humble or, you know, surprised by doing well or surprised by her wins. Like it was sort of a, you know, game plan she has to kind of be like, oh, who me? And then kind of turn it out, which may be true. I mean, who knows? You know, what bothered me about it is that for me, too often on reality TV and like Drag Race in particular, it just seems like everyone is expected to be so kind of overconfident and hyper confident and have this almost like unearned confidence like all the time. Like, I'm the sickeningest, I'm the greatest, no one can touch me. As an artist, I just don't recognize that, right? Because for me, making art is this constant tension between sort of self-importance and I'm I'm amazing. You kind of have to delude yourself or convince yourself that those things are true or have those delusions in order to just make something. But then on the other hand, there's always this way in which you're like never happy with anything you make. It never meets your own expectations. You are your harshest critic. And I think to really be a great and amazing artist, you have to have that self-criticism. So I actually really appreciate getting to see that on screen once in a while. So seeing it from Jinkx Monsoon, like acknowledging where she needs to grow or being a little bit more self-critical, I really love seeing that kind of artist's mindset on television in general. And so hate to see it get over criticized by the other girls. That's all I've got for you this week. Cannot wait for Monday's episode and for talking to you all again next week. Bye bye. Mwah.